The Vatican Ratline. In 1945, when Germany surrendered, thousands of Nazis and other fascists tried to flee Europe using escape routes called ratlines. One of the most well-known escape routes involved the Catholic Church. About 90% of those who fled Europe passed through the Alps into Italy, stopping first in South Tyrol. There, they hid in monasteries like the Teutonic Order of Merano, the Capuchin monastery near Bressanone, and the Franciscan monastery near Bolzano, even alongside Jewish refugees en route to Israel. From South Tyrol, Nazi fugitives moved on to Rome. With the help of the Catholic Church, they received passports from the International Committee of the Red Cross. From there, they traveled to the port of Genoa and boarded ships to South America, especially Argentina. Two key figures behind this ratline were Austrian Bishop Alois Hudal and Croatian priest Krunoslav Draganovic, both known Nazi sympathizers. They arranged false identities, Vatican support, and safe passage. It's debated how much Pope Pius XII knew about it. Bishop Hudal said he helped Nazis because he believed the Allies fought this war for money, not morals, and just tricked people with words like democracy. Initially, the escape route was used for members of the Croatian Ustaše, including its leader Ante Pavelić. According to estimates, thousands of Nazis used this ratline, including high-profile war criminals. Adolf Eichmann, one of the major organizers of the Holocaust, escaped to Argentina in 1950 as Ricardo Clement and worked at a Daimler-Benz factory before being captured by Mossad and executed in Israel in 1962. Josef Mengele, infamous for his deadly experiments at Auschwitz, fled as Helmut Gregor in 1949, lived in Argentina, Paraguay and Brazil, and drowned in 1979, never facing trial. Franz Stangl, SS commander of the Sobibor and Treblinka extermination camps, escaped via Merano and Florence to Rome, where Bishop Hudal welcomed him and gave him forged papers. He reached Syria, then Brazil, working at a Volkswagen plant before his arrest. He died in prison in 1971. The Argentine Ratline was the most state-backed of all Nazi escape routes. Under President Juan Perón, Argentina not only welcomed Nazi fugitives, but actively helped them flee Europe. Perón opposed the Nuremberg trials and saw value in recruiting former Nazis to boost Argentina's industry and technology. His government sent agents to Europe, issued documents, covered travel costs, and collaborated closely with the Vatican networks run by Hudal and Draganovic. But Argentina also created its own escape lines running through Switzerland, Belgium, and Scandinavia. From 1946 on, Perón set up an organized system to bring Nazis in. He appointed anthropologist Santiago Peralta as immigration commissioner and former Ribbentrop agent Ludwig Freude as intelligence chief. Together, they formed a rescue team of Argentine agents, immigration officials, and ex-Nazis. These teams brought in an estimated 5,000 Nazis into the country. Some Nazis arrived by ship or U-boat directly from Europe, while others came through Italy or Spain before reaching Buenos Aires. Even some French war criminals and Vichy officials made it to Argentina the same way. Ludolf von Alvensleben, a former high-ranking SS officer responsible for thousands of Polish deaths, fled to Argentina in 1946 after escaping British custody. He received Argentine citizenship under the alias Carlos Lücke in 1952, worked in fish farming, and was never brought to trial. He died in 1970. Erich Priebke, an SS captain involved in the 1944 Argentine Caves massacre, also escaped via this route in 1949. He lived openly in Bariloche for decades before being extradited to Italy in 1996. He died in 2013 at the age of 100. The Spanish Ratline operated through Francoist Spain and offered quiet but critical support to fleeing Nazis. Starting around 1944, Spain became a major transit point. Nazis moved through France or Switzerland into Spain, where they could sail from ports like Vigo or Barcelona to South America. This rat line was built with help from far-right European collaborators. Frenchman Charles Le Chat of far-right Action Française and Belgian Pierre Day, linked to the Rexist party, coordinated escape logistics using their contacts in the Spanish government. Clara Stauffer, daughter of a German, was a key figure in Spain's fascist women's organization and another key smuggler of Nazi fugitives. She's believed to have helped around 800 escape. By 1946, Spain was host to hundreds of war criminals and thousands of former Nazis and fascists. Otto Skorzeny, a Waffen-SS lieutenant colonel famous for rescuing Mussolini, fled to Spain in 1950. He later advised both Argentina's Perón, with an ambition for a Fourth Reich in Latin America, and Egypt's Nasser. Skorzeny was even linked to Israeli Mossad operations before dying in Madrid in 1975. Another major figure was Léon de Grelle, Belgian Rexist leader who fled to Spain in 1945 and lived openly under Franco's protection until his death in 1994. He became a voice of Holocaust denial and neo-Nazi ideology in post-war Europe. The Spanish route also fed conspiracy theories. In 2014, declassified FBI and CIA documents revealed U.S. investigations into claims that Adolf Hitler may have escaped to Argentina via Spain, based on Soviet suggestions and scattered witness accounts. One CIA file referenced a supposed 1954 photo of Hitler in Colombia. Western historians dismissed the escape theory, citing conclusive forensic evidence from Hitler's dental remains. The U.S. Facilitated Ratline was driven less by ideology and more by Cold War strategy. As the threat of communism grew, Nazi affiliations took a backseat to usefulness. Both the U.S. Army's counterintelligence corps and later the CIA used existing escape networks, like those run by Draganovich, to move select Nazis and collaborators out of Europe, mainly through Italy or Spain, and into South America or Canada, especially with the Soviets demanding their handover. This route also tied into Operation Paperclip, under which over 1,600 German scientists and engineers, some with Nazi affiliations, were brought to the US between 1945 and 59. These men were put to work in American defense and aerospace programs. One of the most notorious cases was Nikolaus Barbie, the Gestapo chief called Butcher of Lyon, infamous for torturing and deporting Jews and resistance fighters. In 1951, with the help of the US, Barbie fled to Argentina and then Bolivia as Klaus Altmann. There, he worked as a security advisor and allegedly continued collaborating with Western intelligence services employed for his anti-communist efforts. In Bolivia, he advised the dictatorial regime on how to repress opposition through torture. He lived freely for decades until his extradition to France in 1983. Convicted of war crimes, he died in prison in 1991. Members of the Waffen-SS Galicia division, Ukrainian collaborators, also used this route to avoid prosecution and quietly settled in Canada with US help. The ODESSA Network, short for Organization of Former SS Members, was allegedly formed by former Nazi sympathizers and supported by Swiss bankers. It operated to smuggle ex-Nazis out of Germany after 1945. It's also said to have operated under the name Die Spinne, an overlapping and more shadowy escape network. Otto Skorzeny, Hitler's favorite commando, and former Wehrmacht intelligence chief Reinhard Gehlen are both believed to have played key roles. Gehlen began laying the groundwork in 1944, anticipating Germany's collapse. The network is thought to have aided hundreds of SS officers in fleeing to sympathetic regimes in Francoist Spain, Juan Perón's Argentina, Paraguay, Chile, Bolivia, and even the Middle East. A central figure in this network was Hans-Ulrich Rudel, the most decorated pilot in the Luftwaffe. After surrendering to the Americans, he moved to Argentina in 1948, where he grew close to Perón and Paraguay's dictator Stroessner. There, he founded the Kameradenwerk, a comrades' aid organization dedicated to assisting Nazi fugitives. It wasn't just a shelter operation. They sent care packages to imprisoned Nazis like Hess and Dönitz, covered legal costs, and coordinated further escapes. The Kameradenwerk harbored infamous figures like Josef Mengele and maintained ties with wanted war criminals like Ante Pavelic and Carlo Scorza. Rudel also worked as an arms dealer, supplying right-wing regimes across Latin America, drawing CIA attention. In 1953, he returned to West Germany and plunged into politics, becoming a prominent figure in the far-right German Reich Party. He never renounced Nazism and until his death in 1982 remained a loud voice in extremist circles. Another notorious name is SS Commander Walter Rauff. He invented mobile gas chambers that killed at least 97,000 people and allegedly escaped via Odessa in 1949 with his family, first to Ecuador then to Chile. There he became a wealthy food producer, dodged West Germany's 1963 extradition attempt due to Chile's statute of limitations, and died of a heart attack in Santiago in 1984. Whether Odessa truly existed as a centralized organization is debated. The Middle Eastern route through Italy or Spain, with destinations like Damascus or Cairo, was one of the lesser-known but deeply strategic pathways for fleeing Nazis. In the immediate post-war period, several Arab regimes, sympathetic to their anti-communist stance and due to the freshly ignited Arab-Israeli conflict, saw value in the military and intelligence expertise of former SS and Nazi officials. Especially Egypt and Syria were eager to modernize their armed forces and intelligence services, so they recruited German advisors. By 1951, over 60 former officers of the Reich were in Egypt. The Arab League, formed in 1945, was already hostile to the creation of the State of Israel and by 1948 had engaged in military conflict against it. Recruits like Wilhelm Voss, former SS head of forced labor camps, and paratrooper Gerhard Mertins were brought on to reshape Arab armies, train guerrillas, and bring wartime tactics. A key figure was Alois Brunner, Adolf Eichmann's deputy and responsible for deporting over 100,000 Jews. Brunner fled to Syria in 1954 and worked directly for the Ba'athist regime, helping train security forces in Nazi torture methods. Despite Israeli attempts to assassinate him using letter bombs, one of which cost him an eye and later several fingers, Brunner lived for decades in Damascus. Aribert Heim, the Austrian SS doctor known as Dr. Death, took a similar route, eventually hiding in Egypt under an assumed identity, where he died of cancer in 1992. Heim had carried out horrific experiments at Mauthausen, injecting toxins into the hearts of prisoners. Propaganda also found fertile ground in Egypt, where Johann von Leers, a senior Nazi professor known for his anti-Jewish polemics, remade himself as Omar Amin after converting to Islam. Employed by the Egyptian Ministry of Information, von Leers propagated anti-Semitic messages that aligned with Egyptian state rhetoric at that time. The region served as a quiet hideaway for many years, but the tide turned after Israel's successive military victories and changing alliances. The fall of early Syrian regimes and shifts in Egyptian leadership led to a rollback of Nazi involvement. Many now fled again, often to South America. The Brazilian route. Between 1,500 and 2,000 Nazis are believed to have found sanctuary in Brazil, entering either directly from Italy or through Argentina. Their passage was made possible through sympathetic intermediaries, loopholes in immigration policies, and a quiet complicity of German expatriate communities long established in Brazil's south. One example was Gustav Wagner, the Austrian deputy commander of the Sobibor extermination camp. Known as the Beast for his viciousness, Wagner evaded capture by first hiding in Rome under the protection of clergy. From there, he traveled along the Ratlines to Syria and eventually arrived in Brazil in 1950, entering under the false name of Günther Mendel. He lived in Sao Paulo, working as a house helper and blending into civilian life until 1978, when Nazi hunter Simon Wiesenthal's efforts led to his arrest. After extradition was refused, Wagner died in 1980, reportedly by taking his own life. Herbert Cukurs, the Latvian aviator and deputy commander of the Araškommando, a unit responsible for the mass murder of Latvian Jews during the Holocaust, also ended up in Brazil. Fleeing Europe through the Ratlines, Cukurs settled openly in Sao Paulo, where he ran a flight business. He made no effort to change his name or conceal his identity. In the 60s, Mossad agents lured Cukurs to Uruguay with the false promise of an aviation business. There he was assassinated. The Finnish Ratlines, operated from 1944, formed by a network of right-wing Finns and Nazis under the leadership of Alaric Broz, who served in the SS security police in Finland. First set up to fight a possible Soviet takeover, the network switched to smuggling Nazis escaping justice after the war. Using the cover of a company called the Great Fishing Cooperative, they established safe houses and a maritime transport system with 50 to 70 operatives. Routes moved fugitives south through Finland to hidden loading base in Härnösand, Sweden, or via the Tornio River in the north. Once in Sweden, individuals could access the broader safe house networks across Europe. The operation facilitated the escape of Finnish Nazis and fascists, German officers and intelligence agents, including over 100 escaped German prisoners of war. After Finland's truce with the Allies in September 1944, access to Germany was re-established via German submarines, through which hundreds of people were smuggled.